See that? Here come the funk, people.
Funky jams.
Yeah, man. Welcome to another episode of Swing Thoughts, episode 318, and now featuring a new and improved Swing Thoughts theme. As always, I'm golf spiritual leader along with Coach Tim O'Connor, my dear friend and colleague and co-guru on this journey as we try and bring more golfers into the light. Tim, how are you, man?
Into the light. That's right. I like this tune. This is the first time I've heard it, more than just like a little snippet. Did you see how it kind of cool. It dropped and then it kind of like went kind of cool, kind of chilled out? It's perfect.
Well, I'm glad you like it. And I don't want to get into all the Spotify problems. We did that last week, but we have a new theme. What we've done is we've adapted, which is a word I want to bring up later with our guest and dear friend, Richard Zokol. I'm not 100% sure how you pronounce his name. I think it's Zokol.
That's for when the French version of his family
went
down the St. Lawrence. And they were taking, in canoes and,
somewhere in his background, I think his people have portaged. This episode is brought to you by TaylorMade QI 4D drivers. They're fastest, most fittable drivers yet. It's time to find your new fast. And today we're taping on a different day, and we scrambled around and reached out to our dear friend Richard Zokol, who has been so kind to us. And he's gotten up very early on the West Coast. But on the other hand, between the three of us, we're 195 years old, so we don't sleep anymore. Welcome to our program, PGA Tour winner, Rack-On Tour, and author of the new book, Zokology, Change Your Perspective, Not Your Swing, is published this week. By the time this podcast is released, you can go and get it. I've been looking at little snippets online, all by way of saying thank you and welcome to Richard Zokol.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Tim, Howard. Good to be with you, always.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
Excited about the book? I know you've been telling some of these stories for a long time, but you finally got down to it and did it.
Yeah. It's it took about 3 years to get the thing done. I wrote about 90%. It's a big book. There's a lot of pages in there, a lot of chapters, 29 chapters. Whoa. And by the time we had the editors looked at it and said, "Look, do we need to chop this thing down?" And he said, "Well, as long as it keeps people interested, it doesn't matter how long it is." So. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stories in there, memoirs, learning. Talk about mind track, talk about being present, talking about, which players, practical jokes and so forth. Just basically the whole 21, 22 years on the PGA Tour.
Well, I'm particularly interested in what tour players do in terms of practical jokes with each other. But
I was going to say, and we're going to get to the book toward the end of our time with Richard today and tell a couple cool stories. This Lee Trevino story that you've told me. I don't think you've ever told it on the show, though. Okay. So we'll talk about that. And, of course, Richard started his own podcast. I like to think, Tim, you and I inspired him.
Yes, you did.
The Tough Lies podcast, now about approaching episode 20, I believe.
19, 20, yep.
And when do you publish that? Every Monday?
Every Monday. We do it every Monday. We're going to do it tomorrow because today's a Canadian holiday, so we're going to do it tomorrow and push it out there. And we look back on, it's called Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast, and we talk about issues that are tough and situations that are difficult and learning experiences. We have what's called the Mind Track moment in the pod, and we look at situations that happened yesterday.
All right. Well, let's just get right into looking at yesterday. Yesterday was the final round of the PGA Championship. I think a lot of people with that star-studded leaderboard at the end of the day, Saturday and into Sunday, were rather surprised perhaps that a player like Aaron Rai, not well known certainly, came out on top. So I don't know, let's start generally. What were your impressions of the day and what you thought of Aaron Rai emerging as the victor?
Well, I thought it's quite remarkable. When I look at kind of what happened this past week, I jump forward into kind of earlier in the week or at the start of the week, and if you don't mind, I'm going to jump back into then, like let you know that on Thursday and Friday, this Garrett Higo guy. Did you
Yeah,
hear
this
about?
kid.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? I mean,
exactly.
his tee time is 11:18 and he shows up to the first tee at 11:19 and the PGA official says, "You know you're late, right?" He goes, "Yes, sorry." And the official goes, "That's two shots." And then at the end of it, he seems to try and justify it that I was actually on time, but I was late. My caddy was screaming at me to get to the first tee, and I was on time. And like, are you kidding me? Like, where is your head? Get your head out of your rear end.
Had you ever been late to a tea time on tour?
Never.
Yeah.
Never. It never happens. I mean, I've come close. You kind of
Of
get that,
course.
whatever. You can get stuck in the washroom. That happens often. And you get to the tea time and you're in a little bit of peril. But and what I had to deal with my situation with my caddy is while I was after hitting balls and putting, and as soon as you're into that 10-minute zone to go, your caddy's eye is on that clock. And
Hmm.
if you're bearing down and focusing in on your putting type of thing or chipping or whatever you're doing, it's his job to say, you got 5 minutes. So from that point on, you go to the tee.
Well, I think the problem with Garrett, whatever, was really his attitude after. It was like he's such a whatever generation he is. That's what I thought.
Exactly.
I'm like, if that was one of my kids, I was like, come on, dude. It's
It's
just
just like,
own it.
Own it.
own
Own it.
it. Where's your sense of responsibility? And then
Totally.
then the other thing that happened on Friday and Saturday involving Shane Lowry and Rory talking about how the setup wasn't very good. I'm going, are you kidding me? What the hell? Because it's bunched up.
Hmm.
The scores were bunched up, and Rory says so. And Shane Lowry says who wasn't very thrilled when you see the best golfers in the world struggling from 10 feet. You know that something's wrong somewhere. This is Shane Lowry,
Hmm.
and I'm going. It just reminded me. Do you guys remember the 1974 U.S. Open at Winged Foot?
Winged foot, yeah. The I remember it.
Massacre at
Massacre.
Winged Foot. Hale Irwin shoots +7
Yeah.
Oh,
to
yes, yes.
win. And and anytime you make it difficult, and this is coming first full circle all over again. And the players start complaining and they say, "What are you trying to embarrass us?" And Sandy Tatum, the president of the USJ, says, "We're not trying to embarrass the players. We're trying to identify the players." So here we go again. This is coming. So it's unfortunate, but I loved how the golf course played. Aronimink, what a
Yeah.
great golf course.
I just want to jump in though, Richard, and say
Yeah.
I get it. We're living in a world of instant gratification, and it's not the same. It's not the same world we grew up in terms of golf in the 70s and 80s. And I think with those players and and I will say this, getting to quickly jumping to Sunday's round, it wasn't the most exciting final round of a major because we just came through the Masters and I think a lot of, and what I saw on social media is the course was set up very difficultly. And at some point yesterday afternoon, I wanted to get your thoughts on this, both of you. I thought it would have been cool if they'd reversed the nines so that there would be scoring opportunities on the back nine because, and Aaron Rye's amazing performance aside, once you got through the first 9 holes, there just wasn't a lot of places to make birdies unless you did some, really anomalous things. What do you think about that? Like, it didn't make for great television.
Well, it depends on your perspective. I mean, I thought it was remarkable watching a new guy who's not comfortable being in that situation, Aaron Rye, and
Absolutely.
how well he handled it. I thought it was great. I mean, this, after all, is a major. It's a PGA championship. It needs to kind of find its identity. And the type of difficulty that it showed, I loved it because if you drove it poorly, you got punished. Thank
Oh yeah.
goodness this is happening because it hasn't been happening and it doesn't happen on typical PGA Tour events. Guys who can bomb it like the Rory McIlroys have a significant advantage, but they do not, or they did not this
Mhm.
week at Aronimink because if they drove it in the rough, how difficult it was getting out of the thick rough and the severity of the greens gave him no chance. So, you take Aaron Rai on what was it, on the 15th hole, the longest hole, and he's the
Yeah.
shortest hitter. He pulls out 3-wood.
Yeah.
I love
Yes.
that. I
Me
love
too.
that. That
Yeah,
was
me
great.
too.
Oh no,
And
I agree with you. If you get into the minutia of his performance, it's amazing. I'm just talking about, like it really didn't make it a much of a shootout the last 9 holes. It just didn't.
well, no,
No.
as far as looking at it back and forth, he put the hammer down the moment he
Yeah.
hit the 16th green and two putted for birdie to extend his lead because um, you know uh, Thomas got in at
5 under.
5 under, and you're thinking, okay, this might be a playoff. But then the wonderful and remarkable work, the psychological perspective that Aaron Rai had to walk that gauntlet. That's the exciting thing. And I think, higher level or general high levels of competition, it didn't come down to the last hole. It didn't have that drama on the last couple holes because of Aaron Rai closed the door on the rest of the field. So that in itself, I thought it was remarkable because I'm always looking at it from a perspective of how he handled that situation. And because, it's not an easy situation.
No.
Yeah, so I think that this is kind of a needed thing to happen, Richard, what you were like inferring, particularly with the ball being so
Yes.
long
The
and
rollback of the ball.
totally. And so we kind of saw what can happen when a guy who is, I think, in the most accurate driver, I think he's been in the top five for the
Hmm.
last 3 years or so. So really, the golf course did play to his strength in terms of getting that sucker in play. Um, but again, it comes back to the PGA is kind of an interesting event. It's the one with the least defined personality.
Hmm.
And I have a sense that the PGA of America was saying, okay, come on, we're going to put on a super tough event. And in some ways, they were trying to outdo the USGA in terms of the setup.
Hmm.
What do you think, Richard?
Well, the PGA has always struggled. They've had for its identity. I think it's in the best place now because when it was kind of Glory's last stand in August, it didn't get. They were going. It's hard to go to golf courses in the southern states with the heat, that
Oh,
type of
yeah,
thing. So they
exactly.
got it in
Yeah.
the springtime. And if they learn one thing, like hard and fast fairways, challenging greens and deep rough really sets the balance from this massive technological advances that guys like Rory McIlroy. I mean, the guy's bombing it 360 yards in the air. So when he gets close to the green, it gives it some balance to the rest of the players and allows the short player. Like the reason why Aaron Rai is so accurate is because he's so short. But give him another angle to go at, and when you watch him deal with his personal situation, it's a beautiful thing to watch. And now it's evolved him into become a great player.
Well, and I guess what I was getting at is that word drama. There wasn't a whole lot of drama left once he got to 7 or 8 under, and then the putt on 17 was just bananas. And yeah, it was amazing. Oh, don't get me wrong. And I was thinking about yesterday watching it, thinking about the three of us talking about it today, and I wrote a few things down. For sure, like his performance was amazing from all of our perspectives. And I think I laughed a couple of times. People refer to him as one of the shortest players. Well, I wrote down he hit one drive that was 330. Like he's short by tour standards, but he still smoked it out. he hit that 3-wood he hit on 15. It went almost 300 yards.
That's firm and fast, so it ran 50
I get
yards.
it. But his performance the last 9 holes, he eagles 9. And from that moment on, it was amazing to watch him. And I was thinking from if you can maybe just throw in a little mind track for the people from a mind track perspective, and maybe just give us a refresher as to what that is, which is
Sure.
it's about assessment. Well, from a mind track assessment, from a mind track perspective, what did you think?
Well, first of all, he had to, everyone's talking about accessing this present moment. And Aaron Rye spoke to about in the same way Cameron Young, when he was playing and winning the Players' Championship, while they're walking the fairways, how they stay in the present moment, they stated, I am where my feet are. And I had never heard of that one before. And I went, oh, that's brilliant. So I did know that Dr. Brett McCabe works with Cameron Young. And I think it's one of his kind of statements that you have to put your full attention on, along with your breathing. I am where my feet are. I had a mantra when I was winning. It's in my mantra. I used to work on it in meditation. And then when I got into those situations on the fairway, I would breathe. I would say, I am I in the here and now. I am I in the here and now. We don't want to lose sight where we are, and we have to be present. Then when you get into your shot, your pre-shot routine is doing your assessment, getting the yardage, the lie, the situation, what you feel you can do. You make decisions on the type of shot, and then you commit to it, and then you must perform. Commitment is not performance. You can commit to a shot and perform poorly. So you have to commit to the shot, then you got to go in there and perform, and then you let it go. Then you start your walking, I am I in the here and now, or whatever your mantra is, because you are overwhelmed. If you're not used to or being comfortable in that situation, like Tiger Woods, like Phil Mickelson, like Jack Nicklaus, everyone's first time there, you will stumble probably 3, 4, 5 times before. And I think Aaron probably he had a fast learning curve on this, and he handled it really well. And he's breathing and he's thinking this way, how stoic he is. I loved it on 17 when that putt went in.
Yeah.
And he didn't move emotionally one bit. I love that. I said, that's a guy who knows what
Yeah,
he's
it's
doing.
funny you say that. It barely registered. He looked at his caddy and gave it a little tiny fist
Oh,
bump, but he didn't go
just like-
crazy.
That's containment.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Richard, I remember years and years ago, you were saying, don't get too low, don't get too high. You just kind of be emotionally neutral. But you could see Aaron Rye, I forget what hole it was, but I think he was waiting behind the green. You could see him close his eyes
Yeah.
for a while.
I
And
love
you
that.
could
He was
just see him
meditating,
just
breathing.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's
I
just
love
connecting
that.
with his
Yes.
breathing. And what I like about that is that still for a lot of people, they think meditation is, kind of lotus position on a cushion. Anytime you can do it anywhere, on the golf course, in the Starbucks, drive-through line, wherever. It's you just take a moment, and you can even do it with your eyes open. It's just connect your breathing and feel it. And that's what I kind of want to use as a segue into what you're talking about, pre-shot process. So you make the assessment, you commit to the shot. So Dick, I want to ask you in terms of you can still be standing over the shot, getting ready into your body, but you can still have a thought intrude. So, in terms of like, okay, don't hit this
Sure.
OB or whatever.
Sure,
So Dick,
absolutely.
what are the ways in which you like in that moment, you're because the mind is so freaking fast. It is incredibly fast.
Yeah.
So, Dick, in your history, how do you combat those thoughts that just quickly intrude
Well, when you
you're
go
standing over the
into
ball?
when you go into once you've done your pre-shot routine, your assessment calculated, then you've committed to the shot, and you go into the shot routine. Pre-shot routine, shot routine. So you practice your shot routine, and it's a rhythmic pattern. We talked about it. We figured it out with Dr. Richard Linetto on his monitor. And you once you start it, you keep it as short, as tight as possible, because the longer your routine is, there's more things that could pop into your mind to distract you, whether they come from internally or externally. Someone yells in your backswing, whatever it is. But when that happens, your awareness is that rhythm is broken, your flow state is broken. Instead of these smooth curves, it's a spike up or a spike down, and you collapse. So your awareness has to be there that your rhythm of your shot routine has just broke. You stop, you reboot, you go back, and you start over again. And if your shot routine is, you want to get to be about 12 to 15 seconds, It becomes simple, and you practice that. You become conditioned to doing that. You rely on that, and that's what gets you through difficult moments.
Maybe explain the difference if you can. Actually, two questions. What's the difference between the pre-shot routine and the shot routine? And then I think you skipped over, once the shot is gone, from a mind track perspective, how do you assess it?
Okay, so it's really, the pre-shot routine is everything before the shot.
Right.
So yardage, your lie, the wind, the club you're going to hit, and all those things that factor into the decision of the shot you're going to make.
Oh, I see. So once you start your shot, that's when that 13 to 15 second part happens. Describe that.
So once you've done that, and you can't, if you have to commit to it, you can't have a hesitation. If you hesitate, you're going to get run over. So then you complete and you're going to grade your pre-shot routine, excellent, satisfactory, or unsatisfactory. You have an evaluation. It's subjective. Then once you have your pre-shot routine done, then you go into your shot routine. And that's you stand behind the ball and you step into it. Rory's taken 8, 9 looks.
Yeah.
Rose takes 1 look.
Yep.
You want to have 1 or 2 looks because, like what Tim was saying, you have 9 looks. There's more things that can possibly come into your thought process that disrupts your shot routine.
Yes, I get it.
You live with your shot routine. It's what gets you through those difficult situations. And then after the shot goes, then you just make a note. You grade how well you assess that shot. 3 evaluations: excellent, satisfactory, or unsatisfactory. And then you grade your execution, your shot routine: excellent, satisfactory, or unsatisfactory. And then if there's shots gained or shots lost, you attach them to which key performance marker. So the assessment is a key performance marker. The execution is a key performance marker. There's 2 of them. And then when you put your full attention on those key performance marker, which are intrinsic results, pressure doesn't. When you're constantly putting your attention on the score or the result, and it's an extrinsic result, that's where you put pressure on yourself. That's where expectations are, and that's what screws up most of your ability to execute shots.
Yeah, a great example of that, Dick. Well, one of the most noteworthy examples of someone standing over a shot too long was Greg Norman. I think it was the '96 Masters when he had that big lead over Faldo, and then he was standing over the ball forever, regrip, regrip, and he just fell apart. The thing that I think is really important is that I love that idea of the assessment. And one of the things with folks that I work with is that after you hit the ball, that's the most valuable time to do that assessment. So rather than going, oh, damn it, this round's in the dumper, or I've blocked it out right again, and I'm such an idiot. If you can have the awareness that after you make that swing, that's the perfect time to make an assessment, especially what you feel in your body and what you had, because you just got a few seconds there of where you just have some clarity of what just happened. So use that time wisely.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, here's a situation. Let's say you've got this par 3, and you assess I'm going to hit a 7-iron, and it's a well bunkered par 3, and I go through my assessment, and I decide it's going to be I'm going to hit this hard 7-iron. And I hit the shot, and I hit it as perfect as I could. It's flying in the air going, if I had my option to take it over, I would not take it over. And then, because this is exactly what happened, then the ball comes up a foot short and buries underneath the lip of the bunker. And I make a bogey. And I made an excellent execution. Now, when I'm looking back on my assessment, where was the problem? In my assessment, I didn't hit enough club to cover even though I thought I did, but it was my assessment that was unsatisfactory. I don't get it up and down, so I'm putting a shot lost and I'm attaching it to the assessment of that shot,
Not the execution. Yeah.
The execution and the assessment are paired together. They need to work together.
And I think Tim's lead into that example is really very, very important, I think, for people listening, because too often, and the two of those comments back to back are so perfect, because too often we are assessing emotionally by what happened to that ball. It got buried in the bunker. And
the result of it.
The result
That's the problem.
of it.
The result of it.
Because we're not looking in the right spot, which is
That's right.
Didn't consider it was cold in the morning. There's a bit of more. I didn't feel that wind. And that emotional, I used this word last week, your internal gyro. Your internal gyro is a constantly changing balancing act. And if you're looking in the wrong spots, it's hard to keep yourself in a neutral.
Well, that's why you have to have a system.
Right.
You don't have, if people are left to their own devices, they go to results. Because that's what they want. So it's kind of this shot, this outcome, and what it's going to mean, how it's going to affect my personal identity. And you get into that place.
Yeah.
That's called golf insanity.
It's a lot going on. And just getting back to what Tim said about you only have a few seconds and you only have a second or two. And if you're constantly being pulled by the result of where the ball ended up, then you're not going to give yourself the moment or the, as you say, the second or two to actually evaluate what happened.
Well, yeah, and the whole purpose is to keep in mind, most of us have been conditioned to think about our extrinsic results.
Yes.
And that's the expectations. Well, as long as you've been playing golf that way, how long have you been playing golf that way, Howard?
I think just shy of forever.
Okay. So the only way to get out of it is to recondition yourself out of it.
Yes.
Is it going to take a second? No, this is going to take work. You have to have a system, a methodology, and then you have to exercise it on a regular basis with every shot. Now, keep in mind, every time you revert back to your old perspective of being emotionally attached to these extrinsic results, you're going to wallow in it again and again and again. You're going to get stuck in golf insanity. That needs to be broken. You need to change your perspective.
And Tim, what were you going to say there, bud?
Well, it's just that, so what you're offering to people, Dick, is they want to change. They want to change, so they want to move forward. So, but the problem is that as humans it's called homeostasis. Our body and mind do not want us to change. It's as simple as your body, your brain works with you to keep your temperature at a certain level. Your brain and mind also work to keep you doing the same things you've always done. So if you want to do something different, you have to, as you say, Dick, you call it a system, a protocol, or something that you follow. Because if you don't integrate that into your life on a frequent daily basis, you default. Particularly when you're emotionally sort of deregulated, you go back to all your old ways. So
it's the same thing as meditating.
Yes.
If you don't continue to meditate on a regular basis, you can't expect the results you want. You have to have so the system is called meditation.
Yeah.
It'll help you do that. So if you it's kind of like what Henry Ford says, if you think you can, you will. If you don't think you can't, you won't.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't make this step towards working in the system and commit to it and have the discipline to do it, it's like an Olympic athlete. I'm going to be playing the Olympics and I'm going to sit on my couch for the year prior to it. That perspective isn't going to work.
And I think a lot of golfers listening can relate to it. And it's interesting, I think, we can often see that in others, but don't see it in ourselves. Like we all played. I was the worst I ever met, but I play with a lot of guys now, and I can see them being upset, and yet what I saw them do wasn't all that bad. Like if I played the other day with a guy and he had like a 22 foot putt, and I thought it was a pretty good roll. It just came up a foot or whatever, one side or the other. I go, hey, good roll. And I could see him. He was sort of pissed. And I'm like, I didn't want to say anything, but I'm like, did you really expect to make that? Because what I saw was a good roll, and the ball was going toward the hole. You didn't miss it by 7 feet. It was a foot one way or the other. My point being is that, again, if we were coaching or caddying for ourselves sometime, we might make different deductions about what just happened. And what I've learned from our conversations, Richard, and of course Tim and I, that you really need to put your own system in place of assessment, because if you don't, you're always going to be assessing results, which will all, again, back to the internal gyro, which can fly it up.
What most people struggle with when I teach them mind track is the getting over the result. They if you're a very logical person, I find out that you struggle, and they go, what do you mean? I've had one of our nation's greatest coaches say, well, what's the difference between the result and the execution? And I went to him, are you kidding me? You can't tell that difference of that? So if you are one of those people, like most people, that your attention is on what may or may not happen, and you don't break that, first of all, you don't find out the awareness that your execution is very different than the result of the shot, and you get triggered when you don't like the result.
Yes.
Or you think of yourself as being too much better when it's a good result. When you're conditioned emotionally and you're attached to those results, that's when you lose control in this game. And the whole purpose is to detach emotionally from the extrinsic results, the outcomes and so forth, what it may mean, and then to reattach your emotional connection to these intrinsic key performance markers. And when you do that, you get these little bumps of dopamine from time to time. And it's a wonderful feeling when you're able to do that on the golf course.
So Dick, let's go back to PJ just for a little bit, because
Sure.
we got to get into your book. But if you were going to have a conversation with Nick Taylor today, in terms of what you saw him, particularly on the back nine, he was struggling there.
Yeah.
What kind of feedback would you give him? Because as Howard was saying, we'll often see things in others. It'll seem very clear to us what you see in their behavior, like you saw with the guy who misses the 20-foot putt. So if you were to give Nick Taylor some feedback today in terms of his demeanor, how he responded, etc., what would your feedback be?
I would ask him, first of all, we don't know what is in Nick Taylor's mind, and particularly in his mind on the back nine. I would have to sit down and ask him, and look at his, where he made his first mistake, said, what happened here? Was it an assessment or an execution issue, or both? Okay, so it was an assessment, an issue, and it cost him a bogey. And then what happened here? And then each thing. So you have to ask that question, what happened, to draw it out from him. And only he knows whether it was an assessment or fault of the assessment, wrong assessment,
bang
cost
on,
him, or the execution. We don't know. I can assume, but we're assuming. We don't know that. And that's what the whole purpose of this is. It drills down to deeper than just a bad shot.
Yeah.
What was it? Was it the assessment or the execution or both?
And I'm sure we've had this conversation, you and I, for sure. But from what I remember when you were sort of onboarding me in the idea of Mind Track, that the better you're able to assess and understand assessments, well, they'll eventually lead to better outcomes.
You'll do something about it.
At least you'll know where to look.
That's right. Most people just assume, they generalize, oh, that was a bad shot. Well, what was bad about it? There's 2 key performance markers in there. So let's say it was a bad putt, the 3-foot putt, and you missed it. Well, did you read it wrong, the assessment? Or did you make a bad execution? Which one? Or both? You need to find that out. Drill down deeper.
Versus what Tim said, immediately going to some story of I suck at putts, I can't foot 3-footers, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and then if you have horrendous self-talk like that, that just compounds the problem.
Yeah. Timmy?
Totally. It's interesting that we don't see this much anymore. CBS was dicking around with some kind of robotic 3 dots thing. That was kind of interesting. But do you remember it was Peter Costas who would have the Minolta swing vision, something. And what was really interesting is that, so if someone hit a bad shot excuse me, Costas would do this breakdown, if you will,
Mhm.
of,
The
oh, here's what
Minolta
went.
swing hub.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
right.
All that stuff. And I remember, so he would say, well, do you see how he's doing something mechanically wrong? And I
Hmm.
remember our good friend Carl Morris, he said, you know, what Costas isn't taking into consideration that this guy just came off his second three putt in a row.
Hmm. That's
And
right.
what could be going on there. So maybe I could use that as somewhat of a segue into the fact that your book, congratulations, is being published this week. So just that must be very exciting for you to have gone through this long gestation period of writing it and finally getting it out.
Yeah, yeah, it sure is. Thank you very much. Yeah, Zokology, change your perspective, not your swing. And the other subtitle is how I competed and won on the PGA Tour by changing the way I thought. And I'm a strong believer and a disruptor in the teaching industry type of thing that,
You're a
too much.
disturber.
Too much emphasis is put on golf swing, way too much, if you want to perform. And if you don't have, like I believe that you don't, if you're looking to build confidence, confidence isn't going to fall on your lap. The only way you get confidence is by performing. Performance, if you want to increase your confidence, you have to increase your performance. And when your performance, and it can go down just as quickly. So I tell my stories in struggles, and believe me, there's a lot of them. Having to go back to the qualifying school 5 different times and making it 5 times, and then my sixth time was through the Corn Ferry Tour, finishing 13th on the money list. So, and what I learned, and how I was in golf insanity and struggling and having bad thoughts, and how I got out of those. I had to dig myself out of those, learning to be present, going through ancient Chinese meditation, reading books like on how to calm your mind, dealing, talking to Eckhart Tolle and reading his book,
Hmm.
The Power of Now, and meeting him, and how it enabled me to win the CPGA championship in 2001 very effectively. So it's and a lot of stories that go a long way, and that go take me back to the PGA Tour many
Well,
years
before
ago.
we let you go and we tell the Lee Torino story, which I think is crazy, it's a long title and there's lots to dig into and tease out of. But what what was the story? If you could just maybe cull it down to one idea, what was the biggest thing that changed your perspective? What was the biggest change in your
The
perspective?
biggest change happened when I won. My perspective changed in an instant. I was heading to the Greater Milwaukee Open and the Canadian Open. I had won earlier in the year in 1992, the Deposit Guarantee Classic, and I had my eye on winning the Canadian Open. So I kind of geared myself up. And the day before I went to Milwaukee, because wanted to play the week before the Canadian Open at Glen Abbey, and I got a call from my landlord. I couldn't afford to buy a home. I was traveling with my family, I had 3 kids, and my wife, with 5 airline tickets and 2 hotel rooms, and we're renting a home in Richmond. And he said, "You got 3 months to be out." And I was so pissed off that I was failing as a provider to my family, putting a roof over them. And I was so furious with myself that I allowed us to be in this position. And I just says, "I'm going to win the goddamn tournament next week. I am going to take it." And everyone in my way is standing in the way of me putting a roof over my head. And that empowered me to no end. And I said, "Nobody knows this but me." And I told my wife, I said, "I'm going to win this fucking tournament."
Wow.
And I went out there, and my whole perspective, I flew to Milwaukee on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I said, everyone in here, 155 other people in this tournament have no idea what I know. And what I know is they don't stand a chance. I'm not going to knock on the door. I'm not going to push the door. I'm going to kick the door off its hinges, and there's nothing they're going to be able to do about it. Today, it makes my hair stand on
Wow.
end. And I went in there and I shoot 64 the final round, got paired in the final group on the last day, and I'm standing on the tee. Mark playing with Mark Brooks. He was the defending champion, And my belief system, it was like that super powered situation where the mother lifts the Volkswagen
Yeah,
up
yeah, yeah.
that story. And I don't know where this superpower came from, but there was not one person that was going to stand in my way to putting a roof over my children's head. And I went in there, shot 66 the final round, and won the tournament. And it empowered me to no end. It was a very
But that's an
special
amazing
moment.
story. But why? So
Why
it
couldn't I
took.
repeat that?
Well, not no, but like, yeah. Well, why couldn't you repeat it? Or is that what it takes somebody to finally just say screw it, and I'm going to push through?
Well, it depends on the situation. It depends. Like to me, if I was playing for myself, I'm okay. It's kind of meh. I don't know, fine. But it's my children. It's my
Okay.
wife.
All
It's
right.
my sense of responsibility. Now you're screwing with a different matter.
Well, it's a great story, and there are some others in this book. Now, can you tell us quickly the Lee Trevino story? Then we got to let you go.
Sure. Lee Trevino, we're talking. I played with Lee Trevino a couple of times at the Canadian Open, and we'd often tell stories about this guy named Jim King, who was a tour player, and a lot of people said that he was a leg breaker, a collector for the South Florida mob.
That's right.
So we're telling stories, and Trevino tells me, he said, "Let me tell you a story." He said, "Back in 19, he said, I used to travel with a gun, handgun." And he said, it was in my golf bag. And then when I got to the hotel, I put it by the nightstand by the telephone next to my bed. He goes, in 1967, I finished 45th on the PGA Tour money list and made him exempt for 1968. And he gets to Doral, and there's this knock at the door. And Trevino tells me, and this is Trevino telling me, Trevino says, I open the door, and it's this Jim King. He's a big, bloody son of a bitch, and he's up there, and he says to Trevino, he goes, "Hey, I hear you're pretty good." And Trevino didn't sense any threat. He says, "Come on in, let's have a talk." So Jim King comes into his bed, and he's looking around, sitting on the edge of his bed, and he notices this 38 pistol on his nightstand. And Jim King says to Trevino, he says, "Is that yours?" Trevino goes, "Yeah, that's mine." He goes, "What do you need that for?" He says, "Just in case I get in a jam with a guy your size, this gives me a better fighting chance." And then right after that, Trevino says to me, says, "Jim King became my bodyguard."
That's hilarious.
So it's kind of like, and going, wow, that is just some story. Like the gun was in his golf bag when he was playing in tournaments.
Well, it's a different time in the 60s. I still remember Trevino. Do you remember he used to wear a Band-Aid on his arm? Do you know why?
Yes.
Because he was covering up his tattoo.
A tattoo that said his ex-wife said Anna.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the fact that he didn't want anyone to know he had some ink. Different time. Listen, Zokology. It's available by the time we release this podcast. Change your perspective, not your swing. And looking forward to reading it. It'll have a little bit of everything in there. Some great stories, some how Richard broke through, some Mind Track stuff there to remind you if you haven't. Plus, we've had. Listen, if you want to hear more about Mind Track, we've had we've talked about it on the show several times. So just go search for Richard's appearances. Hey, man, congratulations and thanks again.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, I can't thank you enough. Really appreciate the time, and
always our pleasure.
Always love the conversation.
Yeah, and anytime we can get you back on, we look forward to it. Take care.
Thank you. You know my number. Bye for now.
Yeah, that's
Cheers,
Richard
we do.
Zokol, everybody. Should I play some transition music? I don't know.
He's already gone.
He's gone now.
I had a client this week go, O'Connor, love your podcast, but you got to work on that bit when a guest leaves the show. It's so awkward. And I said, look, we tell them what to do. There's not much we could do. I mean, if they're just, I guess I can remove them, but it just seems so, I don't know, impolite.
I'm all about the awkward. I find it one of my favorite parts is how awkward it gets.
Yeah. Well, some people, they can't watch Seinfeld because George makes them squirm. So.
Yeah, I got a nice note here. Well, before we leave the PGA, I wanted to tell you, like I haven't been putting a lot of stuff online lately. I've kind of backed away from getting into shit fights with stupid Americans. But yesterday, I had just had enough. I am officially tired of hearing these people yelling "Baba Booey." I'm tired of the following. I'm tired of mashed potatoes. I'm tired of get in the hole. I'm tired of light the candle. Baba Booey. There is one though. Like I just find it's like enough already. Just shut up. I find it so annoying, and so I sent that yesterday afternoon. I pointed out online. I said, "Hey, I think we're all sick of that and whatever." And I got a little response. But my favorite, I will say, there is one thing that people yell that just makes me laugh, and I heard it yesterday on the 18th hole. I'm not sure if you heard it. So the guy hits whoever it was, and the person in the crowd yells, "Give me back my son!"
What?
And I just laughed. I'm like, "What?" It's such a non sequitur. It was like, "What are you? What?" But I where do you stand? Can we get them to stop yelling mashed potatoes and Baba? You know where Baba Booey comes from, don't you?
No idea. No idea.
Seriously, but you hear it all the time, right?
Yeah, but it never occurred to me to ever research the origins of this particular saying.
It's the Howard Stern Show.
Really?
Yeah, Baba Booey is the nickname of the producer of the Howard Stern Show and has been for years. It's I can't remember his real name right now, but it doesn't matter. So that's what people are yelling a Baba Booey for, because it's from the Stern Show, which is cool. Listen, when it started 10 or 15 years ago, I thought, wow, that's a pretty cool bit that enough people listen to him and they're inserting their love of his show in the golf broadcast. I thought it was cool. I'm just done with it now. I'm just ready for it to be over.
I just thought the yelling comes from consuming a number of beers and how it makes people uninhibited and thinking they're way funnier than they actually are.
Yeah. Well, no, that is the explanation as to why it happens, but I think as fans go, I think we should all just say, okay, we've done that bit. The odd time when a ball is on its way into the hole, like say from off the green, but not from the tee. Let's stop yelling "get in the hole" from
exactly
when somebody tees off.
This isn't as funny, but it is not funny at all. But I was reading a great piece. I think it originated. It's in the Athletic newspaper, whatever you call it. So Schmid and Smalley were in the final group, and as you were alluding to during the conversation with Dick, there wasn't a lot of drama because it looked like he had kind of Ray had locked it up. But these guys are in the final group, and the story, you should check it out. It's so good. So these guys are playing, but the crowds are dwindling and dwindling. Yeah. And around, I think the 17th green, the stands, there's these ginormous stands. There's 14 people.
Wow.
Including the reporter who's following them. And it was really interesting. And Dottie Pepper, who you didn't hear a word from for hours because there, the attention was on.
Yeah, she was following the final group,
etc. But anyways, so these guys, they talked about how they didn't sleep well the night before and all these hopes, and of course, it's just fading away on them. But as they go up the 18th hole, a guy yells, "You guys should be proud." And it was just, I was reading that story and I thought, now that is a great story to read because it just provides an insight on that reality for the overwhelming majority of golfers, tour players, whatever tour you play, that the fairway isn't lined with thousands of people. No. And the camera's trained on you, and there's, Dottie Pepper analyzing what's happening. No, you're out there kind of to a few people. That made me think of you telling the story of the Live Tour in Mexico.
Yeah, in Mayakoba.
Yeah, and tell that story again, because I think that's so good in terms of telling why Live is not taken off the way it is and what it's like to be a great player in front of nobody, really.
Well, I was watching, we watched, my buddy Grant and I, we watched John Rahm, Brooks Koepka, and I think Joaquin Neiman were in the final.
Poulter, I think. Poulter was there
No,
too,
I watched Poulter after. But I was going to say, we watched those three guys, and if there were 3,000 people in attendance, 2,500 were watching that group. So we watched those guys play a couple holes, and then we went off on our own and just wanted to follow a group, thinking that, there's only a few fans on the property. And we watched Ian Poulter, Brendan Steele, and a kid from South Africa whose name I have forgotten. And there was those three guys, their caddies, the standard bearer, the guys with the holding up the scores, and Grant and I. And so when Ian would hit a shot, we would say, "Nice shot," and he'd say, "Thanks." Like we were standing, we were behind ropes, but we didn't really need the ropes were unnecessary.
Totally.
But back to Grant, actually, I wanted to read something he wrote to me the other day. He said, "Listen to the latest swing thoughts. Most importantly, you took your experience last Monday, when I did not qualify, and gave us all a great reminder of 2 or 3 basic things that make a difference, that significantly impact your gain and the outcomes you're striving for. Things that you know, things that we all know, but are easy to forget when you're in the cauldron." But he finished it by saying, "It was a great show. Foundational swing thoughts. The main reason I started listening in the first place." And I know what he means. It was like, oftentimes you and I sharing stories of our own failures and learning experiences are what people connect with because we're just amateurs. Like I sometimes think that we can't really relate to the ball striking that we see on TV because I often wonder, like, because there's lots of times that, I'm a pretty decent player, but I neck and fat lots of shots. They don't seem to do that very much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't seem to have the same
they'll just
kind
miss a
of
green they'll miss a green from 210 with a 6 iron.
Yeah, maybe. And but I think that a lot of people would have made, I hope actually, would have related to, what I went through. And I've had some time to think about it. And one of the things that I'm going to introduce to you is what I feel I failed at. And I think I sort of had a few misplaced assessments. But what I wasn't was that I didn't adapt very well. And I think that the more present you can be, the more likely you are to adapt. But I was a little bit out of my body at times. And I was telling Grant the last time he and I talked, I said, for me to miss 3 or 4 greens in a row from the fairway is very unusual. Mm-hmm. And so after I did a couple of those where I sort of wiped it right, like I hit a 7 iron, instead of it going 160, it went 145 and sort of wiped it right and short. Like, why didn't I adapt? Like if I was watching you, that's what I meant when I said that to Dick. I said, if I were watching you and you hit 2 shots in a row or 3 out of 5 holes and you wiped it right, I might say, "Hey, Timmer, you want to put that, back in your stance or do something, more shaftly." I would at least be able to assess it from an external viewpoint. Mm-hmm. But I think adaptability is one of those things where if you are present, or the more present you are, the more adaptable you might be. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I like this because it's a nice continuation from our conversation from last week. And what generally I find that the issue is, we talked a little bit about last week, was it's not that our swing is not in the slot. It's that we get triggered into a behavior.
Yes.
And the behavior is this: here's my expectations. This is my standard. This is my optimal world. And when we don't feel like we're in that optimal world, how we view things, we want to do something to get back to it, to what we think is our perfect world, or the way we like to have it. So we're going to search for that thing. But a lot of times in all parts of life, and particularly in golf, that's not going to help us in that moment, in that searching for, because there's no getting around it. You want to shoot good scores when you're playing. I mean, yes, we don't want to be led around by the nose by our scores, but they do have an influence. Of course they do. You don't get to be as good a golfer as you are, or a lot of the people we're who listen to us without being competitive. But you've got to be able to, if you want to shoot a low score, then you better adapt to the reality of what you're dealing with. And that's the problem with the behaviors, is that we go into kind of this fantasy land of trying to fix something in the future as opposed to adapt to what's real now. So if you're if you're hitting a 6-iron that lands short and right, well, maybe play it back. Maybe hit a 7-iron next time. Just swing a 3/4 swing or something.
Yeah, do
and then
something.
do something to so that you can take your present reality and work with it rather than practicing hope that you're going to find some solution.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, like, and I know. I mean, we're wrapping up, but I played another qualifier for our Senior Ryder Cup team at Glencairn, which I've been a part of for a lot of years, and it was our second qualifier, and it was the Wednesday after that round I played for the GAO match play, and it was one of the hardest days I've ever played golf, where it was really, really cold and super windy, and it got colder as the round wore on. And out of 140 guys, there were 4 guys that broke 80, and I was one of them. And it was interesting because that day I had high adaptability. Yes, I was hitting it pretty good that day, but not so much different than I did the day when I didn't qualify. But it was because it was so windy and so extreme that I was forced to be in the present moment on every shot.
Yes.
It forced me. Like, I can tell you, 163 uphill into the wind. I'm hitting a hybrid. Like, I went from a 7-iron to my 215-yard club. It smacks you in the face that you have to do something different. You just can't hit your stock 7-iron. Whereas on Monday, all I did was I just didn't adapt. I just kept hitting my sort of stock shot. Like, I didn't do what you suggested. Why didn't I take, an extra club and choke down and hit a punch shot in there? Because for me to not make a par in 6 or 7 holes, I'm clearly not in the present tense. My golf swing didn't go from okay on the front 9 to just horrible. It just didn't. I just didn't adapt. And the irony of what I just said for myself, I just had this revelation, is when conditions are extreme, it forces you to make a present moment assessment.
Right.
And that was really a good lesson for me. And again, I'm going to bring up this word adaptability as part of my 2026 theme.
Yeah, there you go. Well, just briefly, because I know we're wrapping up, here's our first and maybe probably only reference to Fred Shoemaker today.
Shoemaker.
Take a drink. It's just coffee, folks.
No, me. Same here. Shoemaker, take a drink.
We're so much of the way we operate in the world is because we're tethered to the past.
Yes.
Things happen and we just default to this old behavior. And that comes back to what I was talking with Dick. If you want to change, you have to commit to something and integrate it into your life. So the awareness around adapting when things happen in your golf it's around the awareness. Oh, I'm trying to still fix my irons or get my driver in play by doing something with my elbow. When you have the awareness, oh, I'm doing that again. Okay. So let's just work with what's real, what's happening here today, instead of being tethered to the past, which leads us to old default behaviors.
Yes to all. Very well said. And
thank you.
Expressed and appreciated. And yeah. Okay, well, that's it. That's I like it. We did it here on a Monday. We normally tape on Wednesdays, and that's how we got Zokol to talk about the PGA Championship. Overall, I think it was, I was a little bit bored yesterday afternoon, the last 9 holes, to be honest with you, because
you were bored on Friday, I think. I remember you and I were texting back and forth. You said, I think I'm going to take the dog for a walk.
Yeah, I did. I did. I said, I'm honest. It's not. I just think the golf course was set up to make it difficult for to use that word, for anything dramatic to happen on the last
Yeah.
few holes.
Well, those greens, I mean, people talk about the greens at Augusta being diabolical, but these greens, Smiley Kaufman, I think, is it Kaufman? Is that
Yeah,
his last
Smiley,
name?
yeah.
He did this bit at the end of play. I forget what day. I think it was Saturday, and he was showing that even in a 4-foot putt at Aronimink, you could have like it starting here and then finishing there, and just how hard it is to read and to commit. And I think that's part of why it lacked the drama, is that it really isn't that exciting to watch players miss putts from 4 feet.
True. And the last thing I'll say about Aaron Rye's victory, he went 6 under
Yes.
6 under the last 10 holes.
He totally earned it.
Oh, absolutely. And I read this morning, so this isn't mine, but it made sense to me. If that had been Scheffler or Rory, people would be talking about the most incredible back 9 rally. You know what I mean? Like a lot of that was just like the guy with 2 gloves. But turns out he's the nicest guy in the world.
And his
Turns out
dad
he's
cleaned
the
his,
nicest-
and his glad cleaned his irons with a pin and baby oil and then put covers on them. Isn't that
I fell in
nerdy?
love with the guy. I did. I fell in love with
Me
the guy.
too.
And good on him.
And
But
his
it's-
wife, they just
and his
seem
wife's a pro, and she's
They seem
awesome.
sweet, and I love the conversation that they had. Sorry, I know we're going longer, but on Saturday night he goes, what if I win? Will it change me? Will the money, So and his wife goes, oh, I'll keep you. I'll keep you at a
That's
little
right.
at
I'll
a
keep you
regular
fine.
level. Don't worry.
There's a great clip of her playing in the par 3 contest at the Masters this year, and which he won, by the way. And they oftentimes have their girlfriends or wives or even their kids hit a few shots. Well, she gets up, and I guess people didn't realize it. She had played on the I'm not sure if it was the LPGA or the European version,
Futures or whatever.
But she's a pro level golfer. She gets up and she just stuffs this iron shot, and people are freaking out. And they're like, "Oh, she can actually play." Thanks to Richard Zokol. His book is Zokology, and it's available now where people get books, wherever that is. Tim O'Connor, o'connorgolf.ca. And of course, this program is the executive producers are the Humble and Fred Show. Nicholas Frias is not with us today, but he is with us in spirit. He's the one that posts all the stuff online. And we appreciate you STDs listening to us. It's always a pleasure getting together with you, Timmy. I hope you have a good week.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm liking this music.
Well, hopefully it doesn't get us pulled off Spotify. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye.